Imagine it. The year is 1838. And at this point in history, it feels like there's this never ending beef with the British. And that's because there was. And one of the big issues that kept coming back every now and then is the topic of boundaries, the literal kind, the ones that separate the United States from the then British North America, which has been the subject of speculation since the end of the Revolutionary War, 55 years ago at this point. The boundary in this case is the Aroostook River Valley, which is that yellow part right there, which is geographically sandwiched between the state of Maine, the US state, and the Canadian New Brunswick. The reason it was worth fighting for is timber. This area had plenty of it, and both sides wanted the rights to it. In 1836, a census rep named Ebenezer Greeley went to the northern part of the area to do his job. The governor of the Canadian side, John Harvey, arrested the man and then went on to accuse the state of Maine's governor of bribery and threatened to get his army involved if Maine kept, and the U.S. Kept encroaching upon his land. Maine's governor, Robert Dunlap, responded by announcing that a foreign land had invaded his state. By March of 1838, Maine asked the federal government to prove to the world where Maine actually ended via survey. The government said, no, but we could do a survey to figure out where the best place to put a fort or two would be. Suddenly, the state legislature decided to come up with a military budget. Aside from that, Congress decided to give money to President Van Buren to create a militia. So between federal and state funds, the U.S. raised almost $11 million in defense of this area. And then Canada decided to also raise money, and they ended up with about $100,000. On January 24th, 1839, new Maine Governor John Fairfield sent a militia to take up space in the valley, and New Brunswick mirrored the action. Luckily for all those involved, the Aroostook War is also known as the Bloodless War, even though there were two armies at the ready. I said one of the nicknames because for a conflict that was so short, it had several nicknames. The second being the Pork and Beans War, which was in relation to the fact that that was like the food rations for the British soldiers in the area, and it was also the diet of the lumberjacks. The third nickname is Madawaska War. Madawaska, meaning land of porcupines, was actually the center of the conflict. Lastly, calling it a war was more rhetorical than factual because it was actually really more of an international incident. Okay, so back to the story. The American militia decided to take all the lumberjack equipment and any remaining lumberjacks with them to Maine to stand trial. The lumberjacks from Canada responded by kidnapping the land agent Rufus McIntyre and his assistants, chaining them up, transporting them about 87 miles so they could interview them. So now we're kind of at a stalemate because technically Harvey did not have the authorization to make such arrests. He needed England to approve before he could do any such a thing. While waiting, Maine sent out Major General Isaac Hodgson to recruit 1,000 men and to form a militia to march up to Aroostook River. As March rolled around, Maine Representative Francis Smith went to speak before Congress. While there, he wanted to let them know two things. One, that it was their responsibility to defend its citizens and protect its territory. Number two, if they weren't going to, Maine had no qualms in doing it by itself. Van Buren was so moved that he removed General Winfield Scott from his removal project of the Cherokees to help out in Maine. By a very short time, there were 50,000 men ready to go put up arms. Fun fact, the Canadian, John Harvey, already knew the incoming general. Scott had actually been a prisoner of war during the War of 1812, and Harvey had been the person assigned to be in charge of him during that time. So it was due to this mutual respect that they had grown for one another back then that came into play today when Scott actually had Maine recall the aggressive militia that had been gathering in numbers and replace them with an army posse. It was during this time that Fort Fairfield was completed. And since no one really wanted to make an actual legit war out of this, our very own Daniel Webster got together with a British ambassador and they created the Webster Ashburton Treaty of 1842. Once and for all, it would seem that the geographic lines had officially been drawn and the Aroostook War is over. It should be noted that all those who were prisoners who had been captured were released without it. For more information about other political events that took place during Martin Van Buren's presidency, please check back at the episode about his tenure.